Welcome back to 字 espresso, your daily shot of Chinese words with Catherine Xiang. 大家好，欢迎回到字 espresso. 在这个 channel 我们看字和词之间的关系。So in this channel, we aim to explore the relationship between Chinese characters and words. So lucky, every time when I do the filming, it's sunny in London. Nothing to complain. So excellent. Different from what we do in the past, I want to actually take this opportunity because a few weeks back, I was invited to give a talk to a group of Chinese learners from finance background about the beauty of Chinese characters and 5 tips to learn Chinese characters. And it was very well received. We got over 300 people signed up. And I thought, it's good. So maybe let's share it in my channel and to all the people who are watching YouTube. So probably, hopefully you will also learn something from what I'm going to say today. So this is the plan. So I want to talk a little bit about the beauty of Chinese characters and what are my tips to learn them. And obviously I will talk a little bit from more linguistic perspective. So stay tuned. So now first question to you. What is the beauty of Chinese characters? What does that mean for you? What are the first things coming to your mind? Let's have a think. And I think if you are like one of common Chinese language or art lovers, you would say, hey, of course, the history, right? So the history is so impressive. Chinese language and Chinese characters is actually the only pictographic language that is in use. So as you can see here, we've got the characters evolve, from oracle bones all the way to the modern characters that we use today. And it kind of survived thousands of years, and most of the characters maintain its original meaning, which is super impressive. So the second aspect, of course, most of you would think about calligraphy. The Chinese calligraphy is an art form, and here I'm demonstrating you slightly different style of calligraphy. So on the top left, we have the kaiti. So it's like very square, very neat. And then on the right hand side, you have what we call 草体, grass style. So you can see this emphasis on, the feeling, the freedom, the liberty of the person, of the personality who's writing it. And then we have 形体 or 形书. And this is the one on the left side corner further down. And that is about the fluidity of the Chinese characters, but not so, wild. Yeah, so you can see it's a very different style, but still maintain that fluidity. And then the final one here you will see is called 小篆. So that is linked to the particular period of Chinese history, and that during that particular early Qing period, and people will use that particular style. So there's a lot about Chinese calligraphy, how the style evolved through different dynasty and the different, shape and the way express the, writer's personality through the writing style. So this is really, really fun. And what is also interesting and important when it comes to Chinese writing, of course, is the stroke order. And if you learn to write Chinese characters or calligraphy, I'm sure your teacher will emphasize how important it is because that reflects of way of thinking as well. So funny enough, I have a video here to show you that even with nowadays technology, AI, we train machine. We also teach robot to write calligraphy in a particular order, and we also train robot to write Chinese characters in the particular stroke order. Let's check out this robot, whether it's done the job properly. Let's have a look. Okay, wait. It's getting impressive. Yes, even the small ones. And the final touch, the seal. So what do you think? Would you give it a pass? Especially if we have Chinese teachers here. Yes, I would say this robot did an excellent job and followed the Chinese stroke order properly. Well done. Right, so I talk about most people, when we talk about Chinese characters, they will think about the history. It makes the Chinese characters really beautiful and amazing. And we also talk about calligraphy. Yeah, so that is also really impressive and beautiful in terms of its art form. So what I'm going to talk today, I want to focus on, my perspective on why Chinese characters are beautiful and why you should learn it. First one is that you need to understand actually the Chinese written system is unique and it serves its own function. It's completely independent from the spoken language. So this is what I call it 字与音隔离. 字与音隔离. So I'll give you an example. So when I show this to you, the first sight, you might think, that's Chinese characters. But hey, have a look again. It's not. It's actually Japanese. Because actually in the Japanese writing system, they borrowed kanji. So that's what they say, kanji, hanzi, the Chinese characters in the Japanese writing system. So that's the beauty of it. When I travel to Japan, this is the timetable telling me about the train. I can read it. No problem at all. Actually, vice versa, for Japanese tourists come to China, they can also read the sign. That's really, really useful, right? We communicate with each other without actually be able to speak the language, the speaking language, the spoken language of each other. I actually have a real story to tell. So when I was visiting University of Kobe to give a talk, I was actually a bit late, so I was rushed, get a cab, and so the really kind cab driver, probably in his 70s, I don't know, we tried everything and tried to explain, where I'm going. And he didn't understand anything. He didn't speak any English. So at the end, the solution is actually then grab a piece of paper and write down 大学, university, and showed it to him. And he got it straight away. And I made to the lecture on time. So this shows you actually the value of Chinese characters. It's a communication system on its own, okay? You don't have to speak the language in order to communicate in the language. As long as you know Chinese characters, you can comprehend the meaning. So this link to the second aspect where I think the Chinese character is beautiful. That's because actually in Chinese language, it's the Chinese characters help Chinese people understand the meaning in context. So it's the Chinese characters deciding the meaning, the shape of the character, and the pronunciation, not the other way around. It's very different from the European language or any other language you come across. So that's what I say, 字决定音形意. Okay, 字决定音形意. Right, so can I demonstrate that a little bit further with some examples? I tend to have a bit of a struggle with my Western colleagues because a lot of times they come to me either for the graduation where we have a lot of Chinese students, or they're preparing for a new group of students, international students, and they have a lot of them who are Chinese. So they tend to come to me with this list in pinyin and ask me, hey, Catherine, can you help us? We want to be able to say their names correctly. So can you help me or help us to tell me how to pronounce them? And sometimes they want to, know, what's the meaning of their names? And do you know whether they are male or female student? And I was like, I'm really sorry, I can't help you. I can only help you if you show me the Chinese characters. And they tend to be quite puzzled. But look, here is the actual name in Chinese. So I can then, in this case, tell you exactly the accurate pronunciation. Of course, if you think, tones are not important, then why bother? But actually in Chinese language, of course, tones are important. So take the third name as an example, Ma Ming Chun. So when I see this, I can tell you, okay, the middle one is not just me, it's Ming, right? And last one is also the second tone, Chun. And I can tell you that's probably a girl's name because it means bright and pure. That tend to describe a girl. And then this one, for example, Yang Hao Yi. So I can tell you it's Hao Yi, fourth tone, no, Hao Yi or Hao Yi, right? And Hao means Hao means magnificent, right? Yi means upright, brotherhood. So Hao Yi, yeah, I can then tell you, boy's name. So you can see for Chinese people, it's really important. Characters is everything. If you just tell them a sound, they can't understand the meaning. And, only in the context. And a lot of times, even in this case, I know the context, right? I know it's talk about names, but I need the characters to understand. I give you a extreme example now. This is an extreme example, and actually it was a real case in the Chinese history after the People's Republic of China was founded. There's a huge debate how to enable millions of Chinese people to be able to read and write. Remember, it's a separate system. So in the old days, a lot of Chinese people, they're illiterate. So they can communicate, but they can't read and write. It's only rich people you will be able to learn to read and write. So at the time, we were hoping to educate people, think about what's the best way. And there's someone said, oh, why can't we just get rid of Chinese characters? We can just, borrow the Western system. We can use pinyin. We don't need Chinese characters. And then we have this very famous Chinese linguist. And we have this very famous Chinese linguist, Zhao Yuanren. At the time, he's kind of saying, this is not a great idea. I can demonstrate to you. I can prove to you why this is not a great idea. So he wrote this poem. So first, let's hear a little bit about this poem. It's about a lion-eating poem. Okay, did you get any of that? Please don't feel worried at all if you don't get any of that, because the thing is, even if you play this to Chinese native speaker and ask them to understand, they wouldn't be able to understand until you actually show Zhao Yuanren's original poem in Chinese characters. This time then we can understand. Of course, this is in classical Chinese, so as I mentioned, it's a kind of extreme example, but still, when I say native Chinese speakers, see the characters, we can actually then understand the meaning. So take the first line as an example. 时事诗事诗事事诗事实实诗. And in this short line, we actually have 9 different Chinese characters. They all have the basic sound of shi. Okay, so when you see the characters, then you will be able to understand, is it shi or shi or shi or shi? So the basic 4 tones in Chinese character. And each individual character has its own meaning. Okay, so that is why it's so important for Chinese people to learn the characters and to be able to read and understand them. And I think that will be the same to those of you who wanted to know really more about Chinese language. So characters is the way to go. The third one is actually the whole reason why I start this channel and the foundation of why I start the espresso. So the third aspect, I think why the Chinese characters are very beautiful is Chinese people actually invent new concepts, combine different characters. So this is what I call 字生词. 字生词. So 字is the character and 词 is the word. So that's exactly what we do in this channel, right? We try to explore the relationship between characters and the words. We see how characters can be used to build words, because that then indicates a lot of thoughts, philosophy, and also stories and history and knowledge all around it. So just take one example from one of the video that I've done with a basic verb to eat. So if you have watched that video, don't tell anyone else what's the meaning, right? So because so we know the character to eat, but here let's have a guess. Eat vinegar, eat bitter, and eat deficit. So when eat, this first Chinese character eat combined with a second character, which is here respectively vinegar, bitter, and deficit, we create new ideas, we create new concepts. Okay, so what are they? So 吃醋 to get jealous, okay, and 吃苦 to endure hardship, and 吃亏 to suffer losses or to get the end of the short stick. So why is that? Okay, so we don't have time in this video, but please go back and you can watch a full explanation of how we build these ideas together. So this is a very important concept, and I think it's a true beauty of Chinese characters, because on one hand, you can, if you know the basic words, it really helps you to get a sense of how a new concept is created. So they're the building blocks, okay? So that's why it's important to understand each single word. But there is a complexity in that as well. So that's my next point, is that the same Chinese character can convey different meanings when combined with other characters. So that's why this is also why important just to know the single characters is not important. You really need to look at how it's combined into a word. So here I have some examples, and this is also coming from students, questioning when they are learning the characters. So first question is, how many words do you know have da in it? Da. So for those who have learned da, you know, right? It means to hit something. And then I have this question from my lovely students. Hey, Catherine, can you please explain to us why Chinese language is so violent? And I was like, what do you mean by that? Why? Why would you say so? So then they, show me, Catherine, we've learned da, right? So you have 打人, hit people, 打球, hit balls, 打车 to hit cars, and 打电话 to hit telephone. So this is violent. I was like, oh, I see. I see what you mean. But actually, you're right. Only 打人 is to hit someone. The rest, 打电话 means to play. But the rest is not. 打球 to play ball games. So we say 打篮球 play basketball. 打网球 play tennis. 打车 to call a taxi. And 打电话 to make a call. So you can see the meaning change. Of course, you could argue somehow lost in translation, but it's important to understand that, right? Otherwise, you're thinking, oh, it's hit, hit, hit all the time. But it's not. So I think that relationship, to understand the characters, to understand combination is very important. And then to finally conclude and add additional point to that is about the hidden culture meanings. So a lot of times in the Chinese language, the word has double meanings. So some Chinese characters will contain hidden cultural meaning, and unless you study it, you probably will stay at the surface level, and that can be sometimes quite embarrassing and dangerous. So this is what I call 字不限表. 字不限表, 表 here I meant surface. So the 字词, it doesn't really stay with the surface meaning. Again, taking the example from one of my videos with 吃, to eat, and we have, in this video, I talk about 3 words that contain hidden culture trap. And for example, 吃素的, 吃豆腐, 吃白饭. So of course they mean being vegan, eat vegetables, and 吃豆腐, eat tofu, and 吃白饭, to eat plain rice. Yes, that's correct. However, they also have other hidden meanings. So take 吃豆腐 as one of the example. 吃豆腐 means being sexually harassed or inappropriately touch other people. So that's not good if you don't know it, and if you keep telling, let's say, a girl that you like eating tofu, that can be very inappropriate, right? So this is important to know, and we have a lot of that kind of example in the Chinese language. Okay, so just as a recap, so these are the 5 linguistic reasons that I think why Chinese characters are really beautiful. So the first one is there's a complete separation between the Chinese written system, the characters, and the spoken language. So the Chinese written system is completely different. The second is the importance of the Chinese characters. The Chinese characters deciding the meaning, the shape, and the sound, not the vice versa. So don't get confused. Characters are the king, okay, in the Chinese language. The third one is 字生词. Remember, the characters create words. So we combine different characters to create new concepts. That's why it's really important to learn the root meaning of the individual characters. However, that's not enough, because the fourth point is that when different characters combine, the meaning could change, okay? And finally, never learn the words just as the way they are, because a lot of words could have hidden cultural meaning, which you have to learn, and it's actually really interesting to dig a little bit deeper to understand the history. Why? I think one of the things is to ask a lot of questions. Why is like that? Why 吃豆腐 become sexual harassment and inappropriate touch? What's the story behind that? So ask more questions, and that is the best way to learn Chinese characters and avoid some kind of misunderstanding. Okay, so this is the first part of the video today, where I introduced a little bit about my perspective on the beauty of Chinese characters. So next time I will talk about some tips, 5 tips from, again, my perspective, and how to help you to then learn Chinese characters. So hopefully you get to know more about the basic understanding of the Chinese characters today, and then you will come back more to watch more of the videos from espresso, because this is exactly what I want to do in this channel, to explain and to expand your knowledge of Chinese vocabulary, Chinese words, from character to words. So lovely to see you all, and stay tuned, and I hope you keep well, and I will talk to you next time. 再见。